Do narcissists ever get better? Everybody wants to know that. It's probably the most commonly asked question that I hear. Is it possible for narcissists to get better? I was listening to a seminar on working with narcissists, and these people are experts. In fact, one of them sat on the DSM-5 committee when they revamped the narcissistic personality disorder categories and developed the alternative model. So there's a new model of looking at personality disorders in addition to the criterion-based one. There is a new way in which we look at narcissistic personality disorders, or all of them actually. It's how we categorize them and understand them. So these are individuals who've been working with this group of people for 20, 30, 40 years, amazing length of years. And in fact, one of them, the amount of references this person has in expertise is phenomenal. It just blew my mind. So they categorize narcissist in one of three categories. And I thought this was fascinating because this is the question. In fact, I know self-aware narcissists on the TikTok platform and maybe also on Instagram get a lot of flack for this. But they categorize them in terms of three categories. There are those who get better. Now, what percentage of those I can't tell you. That's category 1. And category 2 are those who get worse. When you start working with them, they get worse. That's category 2. And category 3 is those who get dangerous. Now, which one are you in a relationship with? I have no idea. You will only know with time whether or not this person's going to get better, get worse, or get dangerous. I suspected the person I was married to was definitely getting worse. He was weaponizing what he was learning in therapy to get better at hiding. And I suspected that he was becoming dangerous. In fact, if you've read my book, you know that there's I strongly suspect that he was attempting to do a slow effort to take my life, that he was actually trying to kill me. He would have benefited from my death. And I was not the only person he was in a relationship who suspected that he was trying to kill this person. There was another person he was intimately involved with that I independently interviewed after I was doing the edits of the book, and she confessed to me, and she had no idea of my story. She never even asked my story. She confessed to me that she also suspected he'd been trying to kill her as well. I remember our last meeting. We sat in a car parked alone in a empty park just a few miles away from the airport, and he was asking for some money that he felt he was owed from me. He didn't earn it, didn't deserve it, but he felt owed. And he leaned close and whispered a dog whistling comment that I knew that what he was basically saying, that he was going to kill me, that he was threatening to kill me, that I didn't pay up. He made me promise again with a handshake and then said, "Don't make me angry. You don't want to make me angry." How do we know if we're in a relationship with somebody who's going to get better? How do we know that? It takes time. Our problem is not whether or not we can't see what's happening, is that we often don't believe it. Cognitive dissonance causes us to get very messed up, and causes us to not recognize the truth. So that's the situation that often ends up happening, that causes us not to see the reality of what's going on. So what do I mean by that? When you meet the person that you met, you didn't really meet who they are. And in a way, that's kind of true for all of us. Let me not just say that they're super bad and it's so horrible that they're deceptive, because if you're honest, when you go on a date, how much effort do you put into getting ready? If you're a woman, probably a lot. You may have had your nails done, maybe your hair done. You're going to pick a best outfit. You're going to put your best foot forward. I'm sure if you're a guy, you're doing similar things. You're making sure the car is clean. You're making sure that that your hair is done, and you go to efforts to make sure you really look good and that you smell good and everything like that. That's what you do to go out on a date. Why do we do that? Well, because a date is all about making the sale. You want somebody to think that you're wonderful and you want them to like you. So you put your best foot forward in an effort to be able to make good impressions. Now, those who are on the more narcissistic end, though, take this many, many steps further. They don't just go to the best effort. They go to the best effort to not only appear their best selves, but they also make themselves appear like they're like you. They begin to do what's called mimicking, parroting, and mirroring you. I've heard them actually confess to me that they create an identity based upon what they hear from you. They tell me that. My ex's records, I found that he had kept notes on each person he met, all their main characteristics, the things that they liked, how many children were in their lives, and what kind of jobs they had. He actually recreated himself and showed up to the person that they wanted to meet, not who he actually was. And they do this in order for you for a couple things. One is it develops fast rapport. So it rapidly creates a sense of trust. You think that you met someone similar to you and it lets your guard down. You also really like them. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is you end up being blown away that you have this incredible connection with somebody and you really like how that feels. But it does something else that's very, it's very vulnerable. It creates high suggestibility. So it disarms you because the trust is building too fast. So you're starting to feel this camaraderie, this similarity with them. You think you've met, basically, you really have met yourself. You sense that. And as a result, you let your guard down and you become more open to suggestion as a result of that. These are tactics that are well known to be very effective, and they're used by people who are trying to deliberately manipulate people in order to make a sale, for example. Salesman knows these things. Cult leaders know these things. Anybody who's trying to sway influence really rapidly, these are the things that they use in order to do that. So you've met somebody that you think is like you. And you know what happens out of that? We think we've met the real person. We walk away and that becomes our baseline. Think about back to your past relationships. Every time that you've met somebody like this who's been deceptive, you didn't really meet the real person. You assumed everything they said was true. I assumed the person I met was a church-going, classical music-loving, managerial positioned person. I really assumed that. I didn't know he was into techno, he couldn't keep a job, and he rarely attended church at all. I didn't know that. That's not who he said he was. I assumed he was being honest. And that becomes the baseline that we used to look at, to compare who we then begin to live with. So when the mask starts to slip, we see the change and we just write it off as, oh, they're having a bad day, or this person's hungry, or they didn't rest well last night, or maybe they're sick. We write it off as an excuse instead of realizing that we've actually witnessed the real person that we never met before, and now we're starting to see show up. So that's why often our assessment of whether or not this person's getting better or worse is off, because we're not assessing it against something accurately. We need to have a good baseline. And if we don't have a good baseline, then we can't compare. It'd be like me saying to myself, I want to lose weight. And I'll say, well, what's your starting weight? Oh, I don't know. It's somewhere out here. I really wish it was here. So I'm going to use that number, what I wished it was. And then I'm going to compare everything against that number. Well, how does that help me? It doesn't work at all. It's not a reality. So now everything that I'm comparing against is off. It's inappropriate, and I can't really tell whether I'm doing better or doing worse. So how do you know what's the truth? Because if you want to know whether or not your person that you're living with is in the first category, who's going to get better, or versus who's going to be in the second category, or they're going to get worse, or maybe, God forbid, they're in the third category, they're going to get dangerous, you need to be able to know who you're really with. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to begin to watch what they do and ignore what they say. Watch what they do and ignore what they say. And then ask yourself, does people who deserve respect do these things? Do people who really have compassion, do they act that way? Do people who are concerned or show care, do they behave like this? This is the way I would begin to, I would write those behaviors down, and then I'd write a characteristic and actually ask myself, does those characteristics line up with that word? Is this care? Is this concern? Is this respect? Is this honoring me? And then begin to say, okay, so let me give you an example of what happened to mine said he was a manager. We went to a meeting, a team meeting, and I'm about ready to do a stitch on this. I think it's, at what point did you stop loving and respecting your partner? I think for me, this is one of the big pivotal moments in my relationship. We went to an important meeting with other with another company. We were sitting down with another company doing a business report. And since I was the president of the company, I was giving the report, and my ex was the vice president. He sat beside me. As he sat beside me, he was on his phone scrolling. Okay, ding number one. When you're in a business meeting, get off your damn phone. I didn't say anything because, so he's on his phone. It's not polite, not appropriate, but I'm not going to make a big deal and make it a moment of it. So I continue with the report. And as I'm giving this report, all of a sudden I hear the sounds of people having sex. The huffing and puffing and the heaving and all that stuff. The soundtrack that's noisy that you hear to X-rated movies. I'm hearing that coming from his phone. I look over at him and he goes, oh, yeah, a friend of mine just sent me a joke and I didn't know there was a soundtrack. I thought I had it on silence. So you're looking at a graphic video that's explicit. You're playing it in the middle of a meeting, hoping the sound is off, only the sound was on. So now we all know what you were doing. And you have a history of cheating. And you're doing this in public. No respect. I lost all respect. That's not respectful, honorable, loving behavior. That's someone who is blew it. If I had been his boss at work, would have fired the guy. You're hearing static. That's interesting. Well, let me readjust that. Let me stop. So I have a microphone. Is this any better? Oh, it just started. That's interesting. All right. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm streaming on multiple platforms. Is it better? Okay, great. It may have been it touched something and it caused how these electrical things work. So that's where I started today. I started today that there are 3 categories of narcissists, 3 categories of personality disorders. This doesn't apply to just narcissists. By the way, just out of curiosity, let's guess, how many personality disorders are there? Do you know the number? I'm going to wait and see what some answers come up. How many personality disorders are there? I'm looking for someone to write an answer. You can cheat. Nope, there's not 14. Oh, it's still there. Nope, there's not 57 and there's not 5. There are 10. There are 10 of them. Okay, so here's another question. Which personality disorder occurs most commonly in all of the United States? I'm sorry, in all the world, the whole world. I'm going to actually take the microphone off this, guys. Now, I'll sound differently, but let's see how that works. And let's see if the static goes away. So let me know if the static goes away. So there are 10 personality disorders total. Narcissism is one of them. Borderline's another. Antisocial personality disorder. Dependent personality disorder. Obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Okay, I can give you a whole list. So there's 10 of them. So which one is the most common? Nope, it's not bipolar. It's not antisocial. Oh, good. I'm glad the sound is better. Yes, it is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. Bingo. Gingery Shark said it right. That's the one that's the most common. The OCPD, not OCD, but OCPD is the most common. So do you know how you would describe what an OCPD is like? An obsessive compulsive personality disorder? What it's like? Oh, you have it. That's how you know. What are they like? Do you know what they're like? Well, then you can probably describe yourself. They are controlling. Exactly. They have the need to have everything under their control and to do it in a certain way, and they're very rigid and inflexible. In fact, I was listening to the seminar, and he said if you want a movie image, a role of somebody who is a perfect example of an obsessive compulsive personality disorder, watch Ordinary People. The Mary Tyler Moore character, the mom in that story, is the perfect example of an OCPD. So if you ever want to know what that looks like, that's how you can recognize it. how you know you've been around one. They'll say they're really a great person, but man, everything has to be their way. And if it's the highway, it's no way or the highway, or it's their way or the highway. If you find yourself saying that, then you've met someone who has OCPD. Yeah, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, not OCD, which is a condition that causes a lot of anxiety. This is actually a personality disorder, which doesn't cause them any problems. And that's another big deal. So let me pause on that too, because I want to make sure we understand the difference between personality disorders and mental health conditions. Mental health conditions are things that happen to us. And when they happen, we feel really miserable. We don't like it. We're distressed. So it's when you have a depression, something's wrong. You have no energy. You feel everything. They describe it as feeling like the world is dark, really dark, and you can't get out of bed and you can't function. It feels horrible, just really, really horrible. So you don't like it. So conditions are things that happen to us and we don't like it and we want relief. But personality disorders are not things that happen to us. It's the way that we are. So we often don't even know that we have the problem. It's just the way that we function. We're hardwired, kind of built like that. Again, out of this research, the seminar that I've been taking, they talk about that the findings are in. We know what causes personality disorders. People are born this way. They're not made this way. I know there's a lot of assumption that childhood adversity theory is what happens, that they have a lot of trauma or they've had a lot of abuse, particularly sexual abuse, and that has resulted in this personality creation, but it is not true. When they actually do controlled studies against everyone who's had trauma and everyone who's ever had sexual abuse, that they find that it has no impact, that there's no difference. In fact, the majority of people who've had a sexual abuse trauma do not go on to have a personality disorder, that they are not related, which for any of us who've suffered SA, that's a big, huge relief that they're not connected. 80% based on twin studies show that personality disorders are primarily genetic or they're biosocial, biogenetic conditions, that there are things that we're born with. So what are they? Well, there's traits that all of us have that kind of create our ego functioning. There's like 12 of them, I believe. There's different traits in like impulse control. Can you resist the candy bar sitting in the house? Another one is judgment. Are you having the ability to know whether or not something's a sound decision or not? Are you able to observe yourself? That's actually a very complicated one. Can you objectify yourself enough to get up above yourself to the map level to look what you're doing so you can assess what it is? That's called self-reflection or introspection. Do you have the ability to handle your emotions and sit on them and control them and instead of them controlling you? All these things make up ego strengths. Well, all of us are born with kind of varying degrees of how good or bad we do at all of these. And I know that I had a video that really upset the people in the borderline personality camp, and I didn't mean to be upsetting, but when you're born with some of the inherent weaknesses in some of these areas, then it makes it very difficult for you to be adaptable and flexible. And as a result, you tend to be very rigid. You tend to approach things very rigidly, and you tend to want control and power. What happens is you approach every situation that way, and you approach people like that, and you really struggle to be vulnerable and show up as yourself. And so as a result, you hurt people and you hurt relationships because of these characteristics. Well, I've been doing a lot of talking, and I know that there's a lot of people on this, and I'd love to have you talk to me. So what are some of your questions about personality disorders, mental health issues? Let me introduce myself while you guys think about the questions you want to ask. Put your thumb up in front of the questions so I know that you're talking to me. So put a thumbs up in front of it, an emoji, and then that way I know you're not just talking to each other or just talking out loud, but that you're actually asking me a question. So while you do that, I will be introducing myself. I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a clinical psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. These days, I primarily do education awareness. I create videos and content. Right now, I'm working on a course that I'm going to soon be publishing that's going to help people with their cognitive dissonance. So I really want to increase our awareness and help for what's going wrong with the world, why we're struggling with these relationships, and particularly for those of us who are in a narcissistic relationship, because boy, until recently, there's not been a lot of information on it. And so it's been a lot of us gotten into these relationships and think that we're the problem instead of that the relationship is making us ill. So that's what I'm about these days. And I'm so excited to be here and to hang out with you guys. You can find me at all platforms these days, or at least pretty much the big ones. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube now. I have an active YouTube channel. I love you guys to go there and follow me if you're not. That's where I put out longer content. And then also, of course, TikTok. I'm in TikTok as well. So my handle is Kerry McAvoy, PhD, everywhere. The same handle. You ever have one of those days where you just feel like you can't say words? Everything's hard. I even ate, so it's not that I'm hungry, but today is one of those days. So I keep seeing the same name, Mackenzie Keecho. Who's Mackenzie Keecho that keeps coming up? I don't talk about what state I'm licensed in. Am I licensed to practice? Yes, I'm licensed to practice, but I don't really talk about the state I'm licensed in practice, partly just for safety reasons. It's just, to me, no. If you want to know, please DM me over on Instagram. I'd be happy to talk to you, but I want to know why you want to know, because I don't practice, so I'm not for sure why it really matters where my credential is. Oh, Mackenzie is an abusive, gaslighting husband. Well, I'm sorry to whoever's married to him. I'm sorry for them. So there are questions coming in. What advice do I give to someone who cycles through dangerous narcissists? Yeah, we do tend to do that. One of the things that happens is when you get into a relationship with one, and there's a really great account that you should be following. She has a new account. It's called Narc and Me on Instagram, and on Facebook it's Al Levitch, or A Levitch. Narc and Me or A Levitch. And she just posted a video on this, and she calls it lightning in the bottle and butterflies. And I really love that. Doesn't that capture it well? At first, we do feel that lightning in the bottle, and we do certainly have a lot of butterflies. But what happens is that we end up mistaken intensity and excitement as attraction, and we don't realize that it's really drama. That we're recognizing drama, and we've interpreted this as if we've met someone fantastic, and we interpret this as love, intensity instead of love. I would really recommend that you first do is get out long enough so that you have know that you're on firm ground and that you're no longer yourself stirred up. Because what happens when you're in a long-term relationship with somebody who's pathological is that your sympathetic system in your body, you have two systems, parasympathetic and parasympathetic and sympathetic system. See, I told you, it's a day I can't talk. The parasympathetic is when you're calm. It's the low heart rate. It's the your skin's dry, and your mouth it's not dry, and your digestion is going, and your blood pressure is normal. It's the calm state, and you should be in that state the majority of the time. But the sympathetic statement gets you ready for crises. So it's whenever you feel, say that you just get nearly missed on the road, you're driving and someone almost clips the car. That heart racing, heart pounding, your blood pressure goes up, digestion stops, your mouth is dry, and you're like in shock. That's your sympathetic system kicking on to protect you from a very catastrophic event. But when you're living in a chronically abusive situation, your sympathetic system activates and stays on. It's the fight or flight system, but it stays on, and it stays on too long. And as a result, it starts to do damage to us. It exhausts us, for one. Excessive cortisol, all sorts of stuff starts to happen, and it ultimately starts to do brain damage because we're not meant to be in these long-term chronic state of stress. And we start to lose a sense of trust in ourselves. So I would make sure before I started dating again that I felt like I got a reasonable handle heading in the good direction on all of those. I wouldn't say you have to be perfectly healed, but I want you to be in a better place so that you're not stirred up and you're not in the flight and fight. How do you know that? Well, your sleep is going to be doing better, and your weight's going to be stable again. You're going to see that your body is showing signs that the chronic inflammation is coming down. So I would look for those things. Then I'd look for the next thing I would do is I would really, the next time you met somebody, ask yourself what attracts you to them. Is it that they've said something that's kind of exciting and scary? Is it the way that they've been looking at you? And then I would ask myself, can I watch this over? Can I not make a decision and watch this person over a long period of time and see whether or not this is really a person who says that who they are and that is really good for them, and I'm not just being all worked up and excited just because it's causing lightning in a bottle or butterflies in my stomach. So that's just some things I would do. I would definitely do. I took a question on Instagram, so I'm going to take a question now over on TikTok here. Are narcissists ever sorry? Well, so each personality disorder has a primary theme, what it's preoccupied, what it needs to have. Narcissism is a lot about being right. Yes, they want control. That's certainly a big dynamic, but not only control, but they need to be correct, and they'll fight you to the death to prove that they're correct. So how do you get someone who has this rigid worldview of being right, always being right, that they're wrong? And the other part of personality disorders is that the associated drama. They go from crisis to crisis, and they use drama as a way to maintain control. So they're not going to relinquish control. They're going to always remain the dominant position, and they have to be right. And you want them to admit wrong. The closest I've ever seen them get to is to admit that they're wrong for hurting your feelings, which is really saying they're not wrong on the principle, and they're not wrong for their behavior. They're not apologizing for that, but they'll apologize that you have hurt feelings. Whatever, that's actually not even an apology. How can you apologize for having hurt feelings? Because it's your reaction. Your reactions are your reaction. People don't cause your reaction. You react because of the way you're built. So I think it takes what I have noticed is it takes a lot of pain for the person. They have to hit their own rock bottom of some kind, whatever that is. I don't know what brings them there. It has to be some big crisis for them. But until that crisis occurs, I don't see them as being terribly sorry. And here's the other thing. So I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you need them to be sorry? I know I wanted that for a long time. It's what I pursued religiously, is for an apology from someone. But why? Why can't I give that to myself? Because I'm not going to get that from them. And is it really necessary to have closure? Can I get closure from saying to myself, what this person did was wrong? They were allowed in my life. I'm now not going to allow them in my life. And so I'm going to shut down their access to me and protect myself in a different way. Isn't that really, when we're wanting someone to be sorry or we're wanting change, but isn't that really the change that we need, is to limit their access to us? I think so that's how I approach it. I approach it from a different angle. I just find that would I have loved to have I actually have fantasies. I will admit to you, I have fantasies where in my head, I think, oh, what would it feel like if for example, there's a risk mine may sue me for the book. I've talked to an attorney. I know I'm pretty careful about what I have in the book, but he'd have to prove some things I think would be super hard to prove, and I've got a lot of evidence. So the cards are stacked in my direction. But if that happened, I would get to have my say. I would get to look at him and say, this is what you did wrong, and a whole public record. You all then would know finally who this person is. I would like that. That would make me feel good. So, it would feel powerful to be able to sit there and point all this. But would I get what I wanted, which is true ownership, responsibility, and accountability? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So that's why I don't stay there. For those who are just joining me, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy, a clinical psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. Make sure that you put your thumbs up in front of your question so that I know you're addressing me. I know Jeff, the life coach, keeps asking the same question. So I think you're asking me a question, but I want thumbs up, please, in front of them. So that way I know that you're talking to me. TikTok used to have this really fantastic feature where they allowed comments you could actually ask questions through comments, and they took it away. I don't know why they took it away. So now the way for me to be able to identify all the conversations, because it's quite lively on TikTok here, is for people to put their thumbs up in front of it. And that way I know they're talking to me. But make sure you're following me on all the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of that. That's awesome. So another question from Instagram. Let's go back over there. And I thank you so much, guys, for joining me over there. I just started streaming 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. So what advice do I give to someone who's been in a 15-year-old relationship and there are no boundaries and she knows that she needs to leave, but she can't? Boy, isn't that common? How many of us have been in that situation where I know I sat there for a long time. I sat there actually about 2 years. I sat in that spot. As a psychologist, I sat in that spot. I knew I needed to leave and I just didn't feel able to leave. So what do we do? Well, the reason you're not able to leave is what's called cognitive dissonance. You're confused between what's real or what seems to be real to you or what you're hoping is real to you and what really actually is real. And remember, they're deceiving you. So you think and they breadcrumb you. About the time they think that they're losing you, they'll show up in a fantastic way that's reminiscent of who you met. And they're doing that purposefully so that you remember this person and you think, oh yeah, that's who they really are. And then it kind of tricks you and lulls you back into the relationship so that you kind of go back to sort of psychologically asleep to the reality that you're not actually in a safe relationship with somebody that you know. So how do you break that? And by the way, please come to the webinar on August 18th. If you're not signed up and get your tickets, really you need to do that. The tickets are now selling and I only have so many slots, so please make sure you buy them. It's going to be with Dr. Kristen Milstead. She wrote the book, Why Can't I Just Leave? Waking Up and Walking Out of a Pathological Love Relationship. We're interviewing her. We're going to take all the details of that book and take it to another level, help ask the questions behind the questions that are in the book. So this is exactly the webinar that you should attend if this is your question. There is going to be replays. So if you can't make it that night, still buy it ahead because the replay's purchase price is going to be higher than the ticket is. So you don't want to miss out on the discount. So even if you can't attend, purchase the ticket, you'll automatically get the replay so that you have that. But what we're going to talk about how to break the trauma bond, and that's what you're really describing. You're describing that you're in a trauma bond, and we get into these places where it's based on fear. It almost feel like, to describe it is really hard, and I know it's not rational for any of you who've not actually experienced this. I know it's really weird and hard to explain, but it feels like without this person in your life that you're going to die or something bad's going to happen, that you really have made your whole life feel like dependent on them. It is a form of Stockholm syndrome. So those of you who've mentioned it today, you're exactly dead on correct. A trauma bond is a form of brainwashing and is similar. It's in the same family as the Stockholm syndrome. So you have come to believe your safety, your life is dependent on this person. And it's weird because it's the very person who's abusing you who also shows you sympathy. So that odd mix of hurting you and comforting you creates this weird connection, and you begin to do a lot of effort in order to keep this person happy because you know that means more goodness is going to come, and you need that in order to stay sane in this relationship. And here's the other piece that people don't really appreciate is they usually have trapped you in some way so that if you leave, you're going to lose something massive, and it's going to be something that's super important to you, and it won't mean the same thing to other people. For me, he threatened at least half, if all, of my liquid income that my late husband had left me. So when I was widowed, I was left with an inheritance, and I threw all of it into the company, not knowing that I shouldn't have done that. And then I made him vice president. So if I left him, he was now threatening to take half of that away from me, which then would have meant I had to go back to the previous life. And that meant my late husband's legacy, something we had saved and worked and sacrificed for 30 plus years, was going to be devastated. And it was something I was hoping to leave my kids. So you can see how important this was to me, because people are like, well, it's just money, walk away. No, it wasn't just money. It was a lot more than just money. It was like a betrayal of a massive kind. It was like, it would have devastated me. I was so enraged when I found out that I was exposed this way. For you, it might be your children, or maybe it's your reputation, or maybe it's a position you worked really hard at the job, and now this person's threatening to ruin that for you. Or maybe it's something else that they have, but usually they have something over on you in addition to this weird connection you have of, oh, I need them and I depend on them, but they hurt me. You also have the way that they're blackmailing you. They're somehow emotionally, literally, or financially blackmailing you. So it's this weird connection, which makes it super, super hard to leave. So my recommendation is, first of all, break the cognitive dissonance. If you want to resolve the trauma bond, you want to get out of the trauma bond, you must resolve the cognitive dissonance. So what is the duality, the false reality that you think or hope is real but isn't, versus what is really actually true? For me, it was the person I thought loved me and chose me and married me and said he wanted till death do us part was actually a serial cheater who never stopped and was actively trying to deceive me in every which way he could to keep his lifestyle going. And he was actually stealing money from me, making me think he lost the money to keep the lifestyle going because he didn't have any money of his own. So he's using my money. That was the truth. That's the truth that I couldn't see. And it took me until I could finally really see the truth that this guy was a monster. He was actually truly a monster. It was until I finally said, no, the guy I met never existed. For me, I had to get to the place where I said, the person I met was a dream, a mirage, wasn't a reality, and was gone. And the person I was actually really living with was who really he was. And this other person's never coming back. And that's how I began to get ready. So then the next thing to do is get ready to take the exit. So watch for the next exit that you get, the next opening, and you take it. And I did. In fact, the moment I realized all that and I put it all together, it felt like a light switched for me. And literally within moments, within hours, there was another opening. And I knew it. I knew it was an opening. And I knew when I walked through it, it was going to change my life for forever. And it did. It did. I wish it was a good opening. It was a painful opening. I got the news that my oldest son had leukemia. He was dying in a hospital, and I fled back to the United States. I wasn't living in the United States at the time. Fled back to the United States. But I knew coming back to the United States would force me to have to be here for a long time, and that I knew that my now ex would not be able to withstand what was coming. I already had done it once with my late husband died of cancer. I knew what cancer meant. I knew how it was going to change my life. I knew this man didn't have the wherewithal to stick it out. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, he fled back. He left the country and was gone. And my marriage was over. So get ready, break the cognitive dissonance, and get prepared. Let me find Jess, the life coach's questions, because I know she kept asking it, and I want to make sure we take it. And I know there's lots of comments that come through here. Okay, there you are. And the question is, can you explain the healthy expectation for closure after confrontation in a relationship for us? What is healthy closure after? Yeah, I kind of touched on it, but let me kind of touch on it again. So closure, let me ask you it by asking you get to it by asking you a question. What do you define as closure? I love closure. To me, closure means that I have an answer, that I can sort of say, okay, this is what happened, this is why it happened, and this is what I'm going to do so that it doesn't happen again. This is what I think closure means to me. Yes, we often like closure with someone saying to them, coming to us and saying to us, I did wrong by you. This is what I did to you. I shouldn't have done that. You deserved better. That's what the closure we often want. But that's not the closure we're going to get with personality disorders. We're just not going to get that for lots of complicated reasons. But it doesn't mean that you can't to yourself come to the conclusion that what happened to you was wrong, and and who you are because of it, and who you're going to become as you heal from it. Yeah, Belle, I like your explanation. Belle Grail says, closure accepting the past is not going to change, but you move on from it. I like that. I think that's, but I think it's more than just accepting the past. For some of us, for some of us, accepting the past is enough. But I think there's others of us that we need to not only accept it, but we need to make sense of the past. I know for me, the best way for me to not make the same errors is for me to know why what happened, to have a sense of understanding about it, so that then I can avoid the same mistakes or the same red flags. So I like to do an analysis. That's what I do. And for me, writing the book, Love You More, The Harrowing Tales of Lies, Sex Addiction, and Double Cross really helped me, because it took 3 years and 9 edits for me to do that. And for those, I know a lot of you have already read it because you guys tell me all the time, but it's got 153 reviews now, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. But for me to have written it, spent 3 years writing the details, reviewing it, having to face the truth of it, and then revising it, and then really sitting on the events and then seeing what I didn't see. There were events in it that at the time they were happening so fast, and maybe this is true for you because of cognitive dissonance. And someone just asked me, what is that? I will go back and answer that question. But because it was happening so fast, because I felt so much shame, there was so much chaos and drama and confusion that I didn't actually even know what was happening. It took me months to years to make sense of what was happening. Sometimes it took me seeing it in black and white written down to know what was actually happening. So I urge you to do the same. If you have a moment that just really made no sense, it left you super confused, write it down like it's a scene out of a book, like dialogue. He said, or she said, they said, then this happened, then this was said, then this happened, then this was said, and then go back and begin to actually look at, okay, what is it? How was I feeling? What kind of feelings did I think I saw in the other person? Who says that? What does that mean? What might those things mean? Let me give you for instance. There was when we were dating, he wanted to see his son. He wanted to take me here I was traveling 8 hours to see him, 6 to 8 hours I drove. Our first weekend together, which I'd been looking forward to because he worked insane hours. First weekend together, he then makes plan to go visit his son all weekend. All weekend. He's going to leave me at the hotel. That's his plan. Leave me at the hotel and going to visit his son and come back in time to go to work on Monday. Why did I come? I shouldn't have bothered visiting. It was silly to be visiting. So I'm really invested. So I dumbly hope he changes his mind. He then suggests, why don't I ride with him, stay in another hotel where his son lives, and then wait all day for him. And then the next day we can drive home together. Maybe, and I'm thinking, we'll make it a day. We'll make it an event. Oh, no, nothing romantic. No. The love bombing is already over. I didn't know that at the time. But so I wait all day for him, thinking he'll come back early and we'll have a good evening. Maybe we'll go out to dinner. He comes home late, dark, really late, crawls into bed, doesn't brush his teeth, doesn't change his clothes, and goes to sleep. What? It was so weird. I didn't even know what to think about it. It wasn't until I was like in the third or fourth edit, it hit me. He'd spent the day with another woman. And the reason he stayed in his clothes and didn't brush his teeth is he didn't want me in his space, didn't want me kissing him. We didn't kiss. He didn't want me touching him. He wanted to protect that space he'd had with her instead of with me. I had no clue. I didn't even know he was cheating at the time. I just never dreamed of it. I'd been married 31 years, and the guy that had died, my late husband, he never would have done that crap. So to me, it never even crossed my mind this was possible. But it was such a strange thing. I didn't really know what to make of it. And it wasn't until I sat and wrote the story and then sat with the details that I came up with the rest of it. He still claims to this day he saw his son. I don't believe him. He lied about so many things. I don't believe him. I don't think he saw his son. I think he was already cheating. I knew he was cheating. He was seeing seven other women while he was dating me. I have proof of it. I have all the backups and information. I have the conversations. So yes, he was cheating. He just saw somebody. But that's an example of the confusion, and that's how you get through it. So closure is making sense of that. Closure is getting the answers to where you can forgive Here, I'm going to say something really hard. I needed to forgive myself. I felt a lot of shame. A lot of shame for not seeing. I'm a psychologist. You think you're hard on me for me doing this to myself? I'm harder on me for this happening to me. Maybe I know I shouldn't be hard. It wasn't. I'll tell you what really went a long ways for me helping me find closure. And I'm feeling my cheeks are getting pink because I'm feeling I feel shame. I feel shame about this. I remember sitting down with my sons, and I write this in the book. It's in the book at the end. And I said, I can't believe I did this. And I can't believe this happened to me. You must be so horrified and ashamed of me. I said this to my adult sons. And my oldest son, and I'll probably be teary saying this, said, no, Mom, you have nothing to be ashamed of. He used the best parts against you. He used your best parts against you. That's what happened. I trusted, that's why I keep talking about the characteristics of a victim. It is not because you're codependent and a people pleaser. Yes, some of us have traumatic childhoods. 37% of us have come from high trauma backgrounds with dysfunctional families. But the majority of us, 67% of us, score high on the 5-factor personality test with agreeableness and conscientiousness. That means that you are long-suffering and you believe in the goodness of others and you stick through it for your friends. And when somebody's in trouble, you come through for them. That's what predators are using against you. That's what predators are using against you. Brittany, bringing back Brittany, just said something really lovely. And I got to meet her at the meetup, guys. And we're having another meetup, October 15th in Austin, Texas. The full day, we're going to have one-on-ones. We're going to have a VIP group question and answer time. And then we're going to have a public forum where we get to meet you in person. But it's going to be October 15th. The details are coming out in a week or two, where the venue is, how you can sign up, if you want to be part of the VIP Q&A, if you want to come and have a one-on-one with one of us. There's 10 of us of Narc Avengers are going to be there. I don't know if you've heard of Narc Avengers, but I've seen some of them pop through here. I know I'll miss all 16 of us, but there's 16 members that make up the Narc Avengers. We now have a website, narcavengers.com, so if you want to see who we are and what we represent. But we're all about narcissistic abuse, but 10 of the 16 are going to be there. But bringing back Brittany, which I got to meet in Durham, North Carolina, says, Shane cannot survive being spoken and met with compassion and empathy. Oh, man. Wow. Let me read that again, because that's just, shame cannot survive being spoken and met with compassion and empathy. Wow. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you. Oof, you hit me right there. So Rambling On wants to know, she got an ex who's trying to steal, and he got a settlement from an accident that about killed her and actually did take the life of her dad. Yeah, here's the other thing that's really, really, really shocking. Our Narc Avengers professionals, well, a lot of us are certified. I go back to that question. A lot of us are certified coaches. Some of us are licensed. Myself is licensed. But we all have a certain, to be a member of this group, you have to be invited. It's by private invitation, and you're vetted, and you have to have a lot of integrity and have a solid platform. So yeah, I have enormous trust in this group of individuals. I really do. I've gotten to know them very, very well. So if you want to know who we are, narcavengers.com. But let me go back to the question of having something incredible. This, if I had a settlement out of an accident that took the life of my father and almost killed me, wow, that would be very dear. See, I told you they go after something that is super important to you. Yeah, I would make sure I had really, really good attorneys. And here's the mistake that we make. So please, please don't make this mistake. You know how you assume that there are behaviors or actions that are just too low, to go to, that you wouldn't personally do, and you couldn't believe anybody would actually do them. That limit, because like no holds barred, there is no hold, there's no barred holds in their dealings with you. Everything is on the table. It is possible. Everything is possible. So you must plan for the worst contingencies, because the worst contingencies will happen. I can't tell you the number of people that I've met going into a potential separation, divorce with somebody who has these characteristics and say, oh, they couldn't possibly do that. No, I know they wouldn't do that. And they do that. I'll tell them, no, don't say that. That is exactly what they're going to do, because they know that's the way it hurt you. That's where it's going to devastate you. And the point is, they want to devastate you. So always get a super aggressive attorney, probably an attorney that you wouldn't want to live with personally, probably an attorney who's a narcissist, somebody who's really well prepared to fight back and go to any limit for you. But I am sorry to hear that. That's absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. How do I know the difference between breadcrumbing and stalking? He talks and jokes about moving near you. To me, they're very different things. That's why I'm kind of feeling puzzled on it. To me, breadcrumbing is So let's kind of these big terms. Oh, somebody asked about cognitive dissonance. If you're still here, let me do that first and then I'll answer this one. Cognitive dissonance is actually something we experience all the time. It's a normal part of life. It has to do with a thinking, a decision-making process. So say that you are, because anybody who's been following me knows I have a fitness journey, so I've been trying to make good decisions around food. So say somebody suddenly brought in Texas sheet cake, which is a failing of mine, into the house. And I would say, oh, that's going to really blow my carbs today. Because I probably already had, I can't afford that many carbs. It's not that I can't eat it, but I just have to plan for it. And I probably couldn't plan for it. So I would then think, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Then I even do I log it on my FitnessPal or do I not? So that angst, that pain around making that decision, that's called cognitive dissonance. That's what you're feeling. That it's a thinking process, and you have a decision of what to do about it. So, but most of the time, once we make a decision, whether I make a good decision or a bad decision, the cognitive dissonance is resolved. It just is resolved. It goes away. But what happens with narcissistic abusive behavior or what happens with narcissistic abusive relationships is that you don't know what's real. So you can't make a decision. You don't know, is this a good guy or a bad guy? Is this a wonderful woman or a really awful woman? Is this relationship worth saving, or is this relationship really destructive? Because it unpredictably flips back and forth between both. So you don't know what's the truth. So then you can't make a decision. And you sit there confused for days, weeks, months, and then years. And all of that creates this agonizing confusion that actually does neurological damage in your brain. They actually have neuroimaging of our brains, and it shows that it shrinks the hippocampus and swells your amygdala. So your fight or flight system actually becomes overactive, and your memory, your short-term memory, gets damaged so that you start to not being able to really recall much or think well. You get into this mental fog, and your decision-making starts to go down. So it really has this long-term effect that's very, very catastrophic. That's why it's so important to resolve it. And that's what keeps you stuck in the relationship, and why you feel so connected is because you don't know what the truth is. It's so important for you to resolve that. That's why I really want you to come to the webinar. By the way, Bringing Back Brittany has been talking about Raw Motivations app called Narc app. It's glitching. Why is it glitching? It's not glitching on my end. And I am on Wi-Fi. Hang on a second. I'm back, and I know why it's glitching. It should have stopped. My phone has a Wi-Fi. It sends on, and it's picked up my phone, so it took me off Wi-Fi and put me on my phone's Wi-Fi with no internet. So sorry about that. I hope that it's better because I just fixed it. So anyway, I hope those on TikTok didn't miss what cognitive dissonance is. I know Instagram caught it because I'm hearing those. Yeah, they did get it. Wow, we've just had a lot of problems today here. So yes, I was telling you about Narc apps. There's a Narc app, N-A-R-C app, written by Raw Motivations' Ben Taylor. Oh yeah, I will go through the cognitive dissonance again because I know you guys missed it. Sorry for you, Instagram. I'm going to repeat it. Cognitive dissonance is a normal decision-making problem that we have when we're faced with two decisions. Usually one's not a good one. Like I said, I've been watching my carbs. So if you brought in Texas sheet cake today, I would really want a piece of it, but it would blow my macros on carbs. So I shouldn't do it. I know that. And me facing the decision would be a problem. I would feel uncomfortable, like, I don't know what to do with it. I really want to do it. Or say that you're coming to the end of the month and your budget's really tight, but you see a blouse that you know would be perfect. You don't know if it'll be there next week after you get paid, but you know you shouldn't buy it today, but you want to buy it today. And that feeling that you have, that's the dissonance. I shouldn't, I should. I shouldn't, I should. That's the dissonance. And the cognitive means it's in your head. It's a thinking decision problem that causes stress. The minute you act, whether you make a good action or not, even if you buy the shirt and you can't afford it, or even if I eat the Texas sheet cake and I really shouldn't, once I make the decision, the bad feelings go away, and then I start to feel better. But what happens in these narcissistic abusive behaviors or relationships is that we can't make a decision because we don't know if this person's a good person or a bad person, if the relationship is really worth saving or if it's already doomed. We don't know what's really actually happening. And because we don't know what's happening, we sit in this place of, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything. I do nothing. And that bad feeling that you have just stays and stays and stays. For me, it was the last thing on my mind and the first thing in my mind in the morning. I was in agonizing pain. I couldn't figure out what to do. I would rack my mind about what I should do. That actually does, long-term exposure to that does damage. It does cognitive damage. Your brain imaging shows differences. Your hippocampus is shrinking and your amygdala is swelling. So you're getting more jittery, you're struggling with insomnia, your weight is fluctuating, you're having all of these problems because your amygdala, which is your fight or flight center, is swelling. And your hippocampus is where your emotions are there, but also your short-term memory is shrinking. So that means you're struggling making decisions, you're struggling with short-term memory, and then they're showing some kind of profuse damage in your executive functioning in your prefrontal cortex. So you're in now of a mental fog, and you're not functioning well, which causes more cognitive dissonance because you're saying, what's wrong with me? I used to be so functional, now I can't. And I can't even be myself, and I feel terrible, which just becomes this cyclical thing that, like a snake eating its own tail, gets worse and worse and worse. So I want to tell you, because Brittany keeps talking about the Narc app. Brittany, I have something similar. It's not an app, but it's something similar. It's called Vibely. It's Toxic Free Relationship Club. So if you're looking for support, you want to hang out with other people who are survivors like yourself, you want to learn more about, have mental health challenges so we can heal together, please consider joining my private group on Vibely. It's there's a link in my bio there's a small group of us. It's private. It's $7 a month or $10 a month, depending on the level that you join at. But there's a $3 a month off for the first 3 months with a coupon code in my link. So I'd love to see you over there. It's a really great group. It's amazing. And but there's also a great app. So if you're looking for education and support, Ben Taylor has an app on Apple, Narc, Narc, that if you can get, I will soon have a course in there on cognitive dissonance, actually. It will be just like a preview of my big course that I'm launching this fall on cognitive dissonance, how to break it, how to get better at it. I got a new title, and I can't think of what my new title is right now. I'm going to look it up for you guys. But yeah, that it will be able to be purchased later this fall. I'm going to also publish a workbook to go with it so that you can take advantage of some level of it, even if you don't do the course. But I think the course is going to be very, very interactive, very helpful for anybody who's struggling. It's going to be, because I'm a psychologist, one of the things I know that's super important is that you have to work with your own material. So you need to work through where you're confused and the realities that you're struggling with in order for it to be effective. So the course is called Breaking the Deception and Reclaiming Your Life: How to Set Yourself Free from a Narcissist. Breaking the Deception and Reclaiming Your Life: How to Set Yourself Free from a Narcissist. So I'll have a workbook on it as well as a course on it. And by the way, thank you, Sandra, for saying that. I actually have a podcast. It's called Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. I published, in fact, today was a new one. It went live today at 8 a.m. You can find it. It drops a new episode every 8 a.m. Central Time on Mondays and Thursdays. You don't know that it's a repurposed live. I take out the sections of the teaching and then turn it into, so you just are listening to it. Yes, it's on Spotify, Apple, everywhere podcasts are. And again, you can see the link in the bio. It's up at the top with a little microphone. If you click on that, it will give you all the options where you can find it. Yeah, I'm ranking in the United States in the mental health on Apple. I'm 163rd spot in the United States. Can you believe that? I started the podcast in April and already I'm ranking. I'm so excited. So excited. So yeah, thank you for that. So guys, I am going to wrap it up now. Make sure you get your tickets for the webinar. Really, when I was going through all of that and I was feeling so confused, I was searching for answers. If I had that, if I could have known about cognitive dissonance, if I could have known why I was so paralyzed and couldn't make the decision, it would have really helped me. Oh, Sly, I did promise I answered that question. So I'm going to make sure I answer that question. I would have gone to this webinar, and this webinar would have helped me. I know it would have propelled me forward in a massive degree. So please, 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 do I want to sell tickets? Of course I want to sell tickets. But I'll tell you what I want more. I want you guys set free. I want myself set free. So what's the difference between breadcrumbing and stalking? I've been thinking about your question since you asked that. And you're describing somebody who doesn't really know you, but who's obsessed with you. It's probably both. You're probably being teased along, kept intrigued and interested while this person is working on their obsession with you, which really is their obsession is a stalking. It's they're watching you, paying attention to you. Probably they're on all of your social media platforms. It probably is. If you're asking the question, you're telling me you already know. That's what you're telling me. So I would really recommend that you take steps to protect yourself. So please, if you're telling me your gut is activated and you're uneasy, that is enough. That is enough. That's stalking and that's unhealthy and you're at risk at some level. So please take steps to protect yourself. Oh, you're telling me he's an attorney and he's really smart. Yeah, well, why don't you DM me and I can probably point you in some directions around this, because you may have to take an extra measure of help around it to protect yourself. Yeah, please don't it is, if you're not normally suspicious like this and you're concerned, that says to me that this is very concerning, very concerning. Yeah. So let me part on that final note. Trust yourselves, guys. Trust yourselves. You know what feels right and what feels wrong. If it's feeling wrong, it's really wrong. That's what they're counting on. They're counting on you disbelieving yourself, that you being hospitable and civil, that you're thinking the best about people and you're going to assume the best about them. That's how they get away with so much of this. That's how they get away with it. All right, I will see you on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And otherwise, I'm jumping over to YouTube. It's going to be replay of YouTube's coming on here at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's of Tuesday's replay. So if you want to watch it again, or if you missed it, join me over on YouTube. I'm going to hang out and chat with you. And but otherwise, I'll see all of us on live on Tuesday at 1 o'clock on Central Time. Bye-bye, guys.